What's up, Duval? It is Bucky Brooks, your favorite Jaguar, and this is Believe in Jaguars, a podcast dedicated to our favorite team, the Jacksonville Jaguars. And today we're going to talk about the disappointing loss that the Jaguars had to the Browns in Trevor Bank Stadium, because it was a promotion going on with Trevor and Everbank Stadium. So we're going to talk about the loss. We're going to talk about a little bit of the fallout, what's going on, why are the Jags 0-2? And how can they get up off the mat before they head to Buffalo and take on a really good team that is really playing well up in Western New York. But before we get to all things Jags, let's pay off our sponsor. Bet Online is the world's most trusted betting platform and your number one source for everything football. Bet Online has every stat, every matchup, even live odds and spreads to bet on during games. Think you know your stuff? Get in on our $200,000 mega contest. Pick 5 games against the spread every week for your chance at weekly prizes and a share of the $200,000. When the game's over, head on over to our online casino, get in on a game of blackjack or poker, or unwind with one of our 150 slot games. Head to the website today to get in on the action. Bet Online. The game starts here. Guys, this is a tough one. Coming off another loss, second loss in a row in which we felt like, the team should be playing better. The team should win. But what we always want to do is live in reality. And the reality of the situation is right now the Jags are 0-2, and they're scuffling and struggling, trying to find their confidence, because this is a team that everyone in the building thought would have a chance to really make a special run. And that still can happen. It still can be true that this team can end up being a good team, but they're certainly not off to the right start. When you look at the two games, the disappointment is in, your defense has played pretty lights out for 2 weeks, right? You think about your defense and where they're at. They've done a really good job of keeping the score down, being able to stay in games, not giving up many big plays, and really hold and serve on their end. When you think about the offense just hasn't been good enough. And the frustration comes from the fact that everyone on the outside thought that this offense was going to be high-powered and they were going to play well, and that was going to help the team play well, and there was going to be complementary football, but really with the offense leading the way. And right now, that hasn't surfaced. And so we'll talk about the offense and who's to blame and why the offense, quote-unquote, sucks, per Trevor Lawrence's words. We'll talk about that. But I'm going to start because I think it's important as a fan of the team, as someone who works closely with the team, during losing streaks. A lot of stuff is said. A lot of people are trying to point fingers and who's to blame. Why isn't the team living up to expectations and those things? Shad Khan, the owner, threw down the gauntlet, talked about this team needs to win. They need to win right now. It's the best team, best coaching staff, best facilities. Everything has been out there. And so this team needs to perform. The owner is absolutely right. This team has to play better. This team has been afforded a lot of luxuries when it comes to the guys that have gotten paid. They've upgraded the facility. They put Miller Electric Center in. Like, all of that stuff is like top of the line. They're making efforts to improve the stadium, and that'll happen in a couple of years. And so from the owner's perspective, I can certainly understand why you would think that the time is now for this team to jump. From a coaching staff, you brought in a Super Bowl winner, a guy who has a lot of experience in the league, to jumpstart the program. And by all accounts, he has started the process of getting his team up and going, back-to-back winning seasons. And even though last season fell apart, you still feel good about what you had in place when it came to the coaches. You think about draft and offseason and bringing players in and out, like, you feel pretty solid about the construction of the roster, the depth of the roster, the old guys, the young guys, and how everyone is playing. There was a lot of reason to be optimistic about this team kind of hitting it fast, even though everyone knew how daunting the schedule would be coming out the gate. There was a sense coming out of training camp, particularly after the way they looked in the preseason, that this team was going to hit the ground running and maybe not race out to a 2-0 start, but at least get one of these two games. Hasn't happened. And people have asked me, like, what's the number one reason why it hasn't happened to date? And I'm going to say this, and it's not going to be necessarily popular amongst the players, but I got to be honest. Man, the stars got to be stars. On a football team where you are kind of like divided where you have like the blue chip players and then you have the others. The blue chip players are the ones that are supposed to be the best players on the field, and they also command the most money. And on most teams, for your team to play at a championship level, it's about getting the blue chip players to play at the level that they're expected to play at, while finding a handful of complementary role players to maybe exceed expectations and play at a level that no one thought that they would play at prior to the year. And so this could be a key backup filling into a reserve role or moving up to a starting role as emergency backup and playing well. This could be a rookie maybe exceeding his draft status and playing well right out the gate as a contributing player or part-time starter or those things. But the role players are supposed to be the bit players that you get occasional performance from. The stars are the ones that are supposed to carry you to the promised land. And right now, the stars for the Jaguars are not getting it done. And there's no way to slice it. There's no way to sugarcoat it. The stars are not playing at a star level, particularly when it's been an offseason where ownership has paid a lot of money to retain the services of a lot of players. They've written big checks to a lot of the star players on the Jags. And the return on investment has certainly not been what you expected. Now, it's 2 games in. It's a small sample size. But after 2 games, you certainly are disappointed because the stars haven't shown up. And if you ask me who the stars are, hey, man, I'll reference them. So 16, 13, 17, number 1, 44, 41, 23, and 3. Now, we can talk about Trevor Lawrence. We can talk about Christian Kirk, Evan Ingram, Travis Etienne, Trayvon Walker, Josh Hines-Allen, Foye Oluokun, and then Tyson Campbell. Those are the guys that I would say we deem to be the stars on this team. When you think about the nucleus and who the guys are, those are the ones that are expected to carry it. From an offensive line standpoint, yeah, you can throw like maybe Cam Robinson in, Anton Harrison being a young player that you expected to play. But by and most part, those 8 guys that I mentioned are the ones that you're really expecting the bulk of the high-end production to come from. A lot of conversation has been about Trevor Lawrence, and is Trevor Lawrence overrated? He's not playing well right now, but I want to put Trevor outside of this conversation right now because the quarterback is so dependent upon so many players around him. It's hard to blame Trevor for the way that he and the offense is operating when the pieces around him have not been performing well. They just haven't. And a lot of that, we'll talk about this later, the offensive line. But look, let's be honest. Evan Ingram wasn't available, had a hamstring injury before the Cleveland game. So he's only played the Miami Dolphin game. But he hasn't necessarily been a factor in the passing game. Christian Kirk has played both games, but hasn't been a major factor. Only had 3 targets yesterday against the Browns. Had what some would consider to be a drop in that game. Had a drop in the season opener. So there's some things that are going on where, man, this guy's one of the more sure-handed pass catchers that we have. Arguably one of the best slot receivers in the game. He hasn't played up to the level of expectation. Some of that might just be the synergy is just off between him and Trevor Lawrence. But if the Jags are going to win, it's going to be because Christian Kirk begins to have a bigger part of what is going on offensively. Production, performance, all of those things. You got to see him play at a higher level if this team is going to win like they potentially could with the talent that they have. Travis Etienne has shown flashes. Everyone to go back and point to the fumble against the Miami Dolphins, but I'll say against the Browns, he showed some flashes, has some grittiness, some toughness. He certainly can make some things happen as a runner receiver. Got to get more of him out of him consistently. It's the consistency that separates the good from the great in this league. And unfortunately for us, we haven't seen a lot of consistent high-end performances from the stars. Defensively, Trayvon Walker, Josh Hines-Allen, like they're playing part of a rotation. And understand the thinking behind the rotation. One, you want to get the young guys on the field to give them some experience. 2, early part of the year, conditioning is a factor. You can't play Iron Man at this point because it's too hot. It's unrealistic to think that someone's going to play at a high level on both ends. So you want to rotate people in, keep them fresh, keep them a lot like ready to go. But then when it's time to close games out, that your stars are on the field and they make those plays. That hasn't happened yet. And so we got to continue to get the stars to play well. Foye Oluokun I mentioned, but I can't complain about him. He makes every play that's available. He's a sideline-to-sideline menace, does a really good job of playing. Tyson Campbell's injury has prevented him from being, I won't say the lockdown corner, but being able to kind of lock up that side on the backside of the quarterback. You were counting on that, and he hasn't been available. And so you had the young guys playing. Now, I would say the young guys, Monteric Brown, Jerry Jones, they're playing well. They're playing well in elevated roles. We saw Dante Prince get an opportunity to get in the game, and he make a play right away. So the young guys, hard to complain about anything that those guys are doing. If you're going to take umbrage with anybody, maybe Antonio Johnson every now and then for not making a play or for having a silly penalty like he had on Deshaun Watson that extended the drive. But overall, the young players are playing really well, and that is great. But you got to get your stars to play. Not enough production, not the kind of performance that you would expect. I would think that probably will be addressed in the meeting. Doug will take all the slings and arrows in the press. I can guarantee you, and behind closed doors, he is certainly calling those guys out because those guys have to play. They got to perform at a high level if the Jaguars are going to win. Now let's talk about Trevor Lawrence. And there's been the conversation. It's been an ongoing conversation since Trevor Lawrence was up for a contract extension, and especially since he got paid. Everyone's talked about he's not worth it. What has he done? He's not elite. He's middle of the pack at best, yada, yada, yada. All that may be true right now based on what the numbers are. But what I can say is being on the sideline and watching him, there's certainly been a growth to his game, and it's more so from a leadership standpoint. First time I've ever heard him really challenge guys and call people out for not knowing their assignments. And it's unacceptable for anyone to run onto the field not knowing what you're supposed to do. But it's really problematic when those mistakes are preventing the team from extending drives or closing out the game. Everyone needs to be on the same page. And there were too many times in key moments where everyone is looking around trying to figure out what is the play call and you're not on the same page, or you don't have enough people on the field, or you're making substitution errors that require you to burn timeouts, things that make you look like an unorganized group, which then points the finger at Doug Pederson, fair or not, that he's not getting the team ready to play. I'll say this, man. These dudes are like, in terms of like coaching pro football is very much like coaching high school ball. Like, man, they just are older, bigger bodies, but it's the same mentality and temperament. You got to remind them of the little things that you got to be on. You got to hold them accountable. You got to grind on them to make those feats and accomplishments get done. And then you got to continue to be on them so they don't get complacent. What I see when I look at this team, I see a unit that lacks confidence, particularly on offense, that's hoping and wishing for plays to happen instead of taking them and going to get it, and a team that is getting whooped not only in the trenches, but on the perimeter when people are locking up and playing man-to-man coverage. I look at the team and the fact that Trevor stood in front of the press and said, "Hey, man, it sucked. You know, all I can do is nod my head in agreement. Yeah, when you score only 30 points in 2 games, yeah, it's going to be hard to win. 15 points a game is not going to get it done in this league. Run game, pass game, run blocking, pass protection, all of it is faulty. All of it is off. Steps of the runners and finishing and all that other stuff, they got to figure this part out, because have not been able to gain control of the game, particularly last week against the Browns. Never got control of the game, couldn't impose your will on the opponent. And that's a huge issue. So that's something that Doug Pederson, Press Taylor, the offensive staff, they got to figure out how to get this offense up and going. They got to figure out how to have faster starts. The last 6 quarters, the team has only scored 13 points. They're 3 or 14 on third down, only 1 touchdown and a fumble on 5 trips in the red zone, settling for field goals. All of those things, recipe for disaster, recipe for losing games. So the Jaguars have to understand, before we can start winning, man, we got to avoid losing the game with the self-inflicted errors that are killing us. And so that goes to the turnovers, that goes to the false start penalties, that goes to just the big plays, the splash plays that the opponent is making, like not giving them any fuel to get them pumped up and ready to go without gift wrapping scoring opportunities to the opposition. The team just hasn't played well. And so, like, naturally, when a unit doesn't play well, everyone wants to know, well, who's to blame? You know, let's start. First things first. We built a team from front to back, and so the trenches. And there was a lot of debate over what the Jags should do in the offseason when it came to addressing the offensive line. Should they go and expend some picks on the available talent that was ready to come and enter the league in the draft? Is it let's go on free agency and find a few splash guys that can certainly help? Let's double down. Let's take one of each, a free agent and a high draft pick, and see if we can figure out who's to do it. Here's what I'll say. The team pretty much stayed pat. They brought in one guy, Mitch Morse, to anchor the line, but everyone else is a returner. And the expectation was that these 5 guys are going to learn each other. They're going to play together. It was going to work. It's not working. It's not working right now. Okay. Not quite good. Just okay. Bring the whole line crew back with the exception of Morse, and the results are still the same. You're still struggling in short yardage situation. You're still plagued and victimized by the penalties and holding calls and all of that. And you haven't been able to protect the edges. Cam Robinson and Anton Harrison have not played great. The issues that Trevor's experiencing in the pocket is because the bookends are not playing great. Can't tell you why, can't tell you what has happened, but these guys on the edges are struggling with speed and power off the edge. And as a result, the quarterback is just all over the place. And he ends up taking a safety when you're trying to throw the ball out your own end because you can't control the opponent at the line of scrimmage. If I could talk about one of the biggest issue right now, outside of the stars underperforming, the offensive line has not played at a level where you can play winning football consistently. They elected to stand pat, stay with the same crew. So this is what you get. There are no superheroes that can come through and save the day. This is one where they got to figure out, because they don't get this offensive line going, they have no chance. So that's kind of the offensive stuff. And I can say this about the skill guys. Christian Kirk, man, we need to see more of him. Need to get more out of him. So when I say see more of him, ball needs to head in his direction more in terms of getting it out of him. And he has to catch a high volume of those plays, and he has to turn them into very productive catch and run opportunities, because there are not many opportunities that we're seeing where these guys get the ball on perimeter. So they got to make sure they take care of the rock when they get it. The other thing that I would say, and this is just like, I don't know if it's word of advice or just trying to play Madden through the coaches, but it sure seems like Brian Thomas Jr. is a big playmaker. Kind of seems like maybe you want to prioritize getting him the ball, particularly down the field, creating some opportunities. His catch over Denzel Ward is one of the more remarkable catches that I've seen. Talking about even to the DB, the ball goes up and he separates, makes a great catch, has the wherewithal to throw a stiff arm out to help this team get into the red zone. He has some tools, man. He can fly, he can get it. And what you're hopeful of is you could put this crew together, allow him to grow into that role, and all of these guys kind of find different ways to thrive and flourish within the system. We'll see if they can make it happen. But I will say, Brian Thomas Jr. is as good as advertised. The people down at LSU told me that he was gifted and talented, and it's easy for him, and he's going to jump right in and make plays. He's ready to play and ready to become the number one receiver. And we're only 2 games into the season. So now let's go on the other side of the ball. Let's talk about the defense. And here's what I'll say about the defense. I believe Ryan Nielsen's doing a really good job with the defense. And what I would say about the job that he's doing, he's really scaled it down, simplified it. They're playing fast. They're playing hard. They're playing a lot of young players, but they're not being bombed with just big play after big play going over the top, or guys running around the edges, or any of that stuff. They have struggled with some of those things, but I feel good about the plan and how they're going to kind of put it together, make sure they turn off the spigot. What I will say is young players playing in this defense are playing well. Foyer Oluwakan is playing well. When you watch him, he's all over the field, just kind of dominating the game like you would expect from a old school playmaker. That just so there's a lot of stuff that you can build upon when you look at this defense. I will say that when you look at the secondary, the young players are playing extremely well. The fact that you started Monteric Brown, Jerry Jones got in, DeAndre Price got in. Like there are some really good players that are playing valuable minutes that are really going to help this team down the line. But everyone has to stick to the process, stick to the plan, and just kind of let it play out. But there's some promising things when it comes to the young DBs. point you being a sideline to sideline menace, all those things. Second level, third level players playing well. Ronald Darby showing up. I mean, they have all the confidence, all the swag that you want to see defensively. They know they have an opportunity to be good. Here's what the defense is missing, though. No splash plays. Not seeing any turnovers come over. We're not turning the ball over. We're not taking the ball away. For all the things that we didn't like about the defense last year, the one thing they were able to do, timely turnovers to either stop drives or create scoring opportunities for the offense. That's not happening this year. So even though they're playing maybe more fundamentally sound, got to find a way to knock the ball loose, to create a turnover, to give them extra possession so we can kind of juice up the offense while really making it easy for them to punch it in. So no turnovers. That would be the one thing on defense I'm worried about. And then the last thing would be like, we need more pass rush from the stars. Josh Hines-Allen, Trayvon Walker, Eric Armstead. They have to be pivotal players in the middle of the run game because they're so good. They're so dominant. They have the size, strength, and explosiveness to create the disruptive plays that change game plans. Now it's about making the disruptive plays that change game plans. We're not seeing that from that group. There, you can get close. You're getting around them. You're sniffing them. But at some point, when you're a fisherman, you got to bring the fish into the boat. Right now, the Jags aren't doing it. And it's one of the main reasons that they're sitting winless at 0-2. Going forward, I think this is obviously a reset week, and I can share little bits and pieces, and I can dance around some of the conversation I had with Doug after the game and after the mics go off. I'll say this, man. Look, well, he's a former teammate, so I'll say that for transparency, former teammate. We played together in Green Bay. We played for a team that eventually won a Super Bowl. He was great on that team. I was just kind of like a backup player transitioning from offense to defense, but we always kind of hit it off and got along, and have a tremendous amount of respect for who he is as a player, who he has become as a coach, and all those things. I'll say this: his frustration stems from the fact that he believes that, look, ultimately, this is a player's game. Coaches' jobs are to set the roadmap for the players. The player's job is to take the map, follow it, execute it to a T, and all the pot of gold that we're chasing at the end of the rainbow, all of that will show up. It's not showing up yet because the Stars have yet to kind of fully own what it is and what it should be when it comes to this team. When we talk about the Stars playing like stars, of that group, the group of 8, someone has to kind of be like, hey, man, I got this. Let's take this thing over. And they make a play that leads to others making a play, which then leads to a feeding frenzy when you're at home and you can feel the energy and you start to get excited about what's to be. Haven't seen that, didn't see that. Yes, there was a lot more frustration and, oh my God, are we about to lose again? And those things in the beginning until they kind of settled in. And after Brian Thomas Jr. played, they kind of opened up and made it happen. What I will also say when it comes to like the offense and those things, like there's a lot of stuff to send it on. And I'll be like, look, the offense hasn't performed really well, but I would say sometimes coaches maybe get too much of the criticism when it comes to the faulty execution. Yes, they should be held accountable for if the game plan is bad, if the scheme doesn't match the personnel, if their risky decisions put the team in harm's way. Coach has to walk up there and own it and say, hey, man, it's on me. I made bad decisions. I'll get better. Players got to play and players got to perform. And the bigger the payday, the bigger you got to play, the better you got to play. There's been a lot of money that's been written out over the course of the last offseason or two where guys are cashing big checks. Well, when you cash your big check, man, you need big performance, big production, and it has to come against the good teams. It has to come against those teams that are competing at a high level, and it has to come timely in the fourth quarter when it matters, not garbage time and those things. We haven't seen the Jags' best players do that yet. Now, you may ask me, well, how do you get guys going? Like, what can you do to get them going? Hey, in the pass game, it's easy. Hey, man, get the ball to whatever. You have a handful of plays that you want to get it to and let him have an impact on the game. Talking about a running back is easy. Hey, man, what are your favorite runs? Boom, man. Let's call power OG over and over and over again until my guy's comfortable. Until he's comfortable. When he's comfortable, then we can start doing some other things, and he's going to bust out because he's had enough reps and opportunities to get lathered up before he goes and takes on more responsibilities. So getting the stars up and running, finding ways to put the ball in the hands of your best playmakers, simplifying everything so everyone can play fast. And so as simple as I think the system is, they want to simplify it even more to make sure there's no gray area, no ambiguity in terms of I'm doing this and he's doing that. Everyone's on the same page. We know exactly what everyone's doing. We play fast, we get off the ball, we go hunt, and we make things happen. Those things are player related. Coaches can ask, players must demand that from themselves and their teammates. So that's where a lot of the fault lies. Can the players find a way to get themselves on board, do the same things, look alike, do it right, get to the coaches, adhere to the game plan, offer some suggestions and feedback, but then roll with whatever the final decisions are and make it happen. If the team does that, man, they'll bounce back off the mat. Now, here's what I will say. The last thing before I close out. Every time you lose a bit of confidence. Team loses it, players lose it. Even the coaches have a tendency to lose their confidence in what they're doing. There are more questions than answers when you lose a bunch of games. You have the parents who are thinking about their own kid and the individual accolades and honors and all that other stuff that they can win, and then you have the players themselves who kind of think like that. And so there's always a lot of noise around players when they're losing. It's the family members, it's Twitter, it's people around town saying, oh, y'all should be doing this. And so for the Jags, everyone has to lock in and remain focused on the task at hand. And the task at hand is to be the best teammate that you can be while executing the plan to the best of your ability and really not allowing your mind to drift towards what the naysayers are saying, because they're always going to talk. The other part of it is when you lose and your confidence wanes, do you have the ability to trust blindly that what the coaches are saying is ultimately going to lead to a win? Even though there are pelts on the wall with Doug and his group, there's still a lot of uncertainty in terms of how good can this team be? And if the team doesn't get a win soon, then it becomes a thing like, well, man, will he ever turn the corner in those things? What I will say is the best way for this team to climb out of the muck is they have to focus on one day at a time. So when they go back to the facility, maybe on Tuesday or Wednesday, they got to focus on what are the things that we got to do today to be ready for the next day. Lifting, running, film, study, all of that stuff. How can I maximize today to get ready for tomorrow? Because right now, to think about the end of the week is too daunting of a task. To think about what the game is going to be like on Monday, you can't worry about that. You got the extra time to really work on being really good at what you do. And one of the things that I think everyone should take from Ryan Nielsen, he talks about, it's all about us. His team is really all about them and how they perform. If they lock in and perform, they'll have an opportunity to bounce back against the Buffalo Bills in a primetime matchup that everyone is going to watch. I'm going to be in the building, Western New York. That old stadium should be a lot of fun. Looking forward to seeing how our guys bounce back. We'll talk about some of the bounce back stuff on Wednesday on the next podcast. Thanks for rating, reviewing, subscribing to the podcast. Thanks for telling a friend to tell a friend as the podcast grows. Make sure you check out some of my colleagues on the Believe Network to see the cool stuff that they're doing for their respective teams and how they get behind it, how they present, how they do it on Fubo, how they do it on YouTube, all this stuff. Come be a part of the family. Make sure you continue to tell a friend to tell a friend about Believe in Jaguars. So even though we're down now, soon we'll be back up. Looking forward to seeing the Jaguars come back up. And hopefully it happens at the end of the weekend when they take on the Buffalo Bills on Monday night. Until next time, which will be Wednesday when we have another pod, I'm Bucky Brooks, and I will catch up with you soon.